My name is Carson. Welcome to Thrifty Garage, a channel where we do everyday repairs, how-tos, and reviews. And in today's quick video, well, it may not be so very quick, we're going to do a video for my dad. He's having some issues with the sprinklers, so we're going to kind of walk through my repair process. In addition to YouTube, I should say, I do landscaping. Sorry, this is going to be unedited. We're just running off my phone here, and we'll upload straight to YouTube. So forgive any misnomers. But here we got a valve box. Inside here, we've got a valve, sprinkler valve. So your typical valve box, you're gonna open these things up, and you'll see inside a valve or multiple valves laid out here. Hopefully you've got working space in here. Sometimes they're butted up against the side here, really difficult to work with. We're gonna remove the box and just kind of take a look inside. So the issue he's having, the problem he's having is his sprinklers, when his main line's turned on, we've got water coming in here from the main line. When his main line's turned on, this valve, all the heads are just weeping. They just continue to weep. He has pulled off this top cap. So here we've got this is an old valve off a sprinkler repair, but then we got this bottom half that's connected to our pipe here, and then we've got this upper half that's used. We got 6 screws in here to hold it down. So he's taken that off, he's pulled it apart, and he's cleaned it out. Put it back together. Hasn't solved the problem. Let's go ahead and tear this apart just so you kind of know what we're talking about here. So it's pretty common if you've got a break in the line previous, or depending on where your water source is, sometimes you've got dirty water, and sometimes you get a rock in the line. And those rocks, when they get into these diaphragms, what happens is that the system's turned on, everything's working fine. You may have had somebody come out or a utility worker down the line, did some work, no problems whatsoever. But then the next time your system waters, this zone turns on and allows that rock to go into this valve. It moves that water, maybe that rock's down here, and it pushes into here, and it gets stuck in this diaphragm. And then that's fine, it lets the zone water, everything's fine, but then when it goes to turn off, that diaphragm cannot close because that rock's in the way. So it tries to close, and it can't. So the way these operate is we've got a solenoid on here. And the solenoid just has a small electric signal that comes from your controller, and that opens up a little portal and allows water to start going through here, which opens up the whole cavity in the valve. Once that water's flowing, we'll get off here somewhere. What's the hold up here? So anyways, that diaphragm can't close, and it will cause the zone to continue to run. Sometimes it's full force running, sometimes it's just a little bit of water. But as you can see in here, we've got this diaphragm. Now my dad, he's got very, very dirty water. They've got a secondary water source. So these, if you don't have a filter upstream, you probably want to clean these out, and you probably should put in a filter. And I think they actually have a filter or two, and they still just have really dirty water. So if the filter's not the problem, usually what I'll find is inside here, there'll be a little tiny rock, and sometimes it's hard. Get some pliers or something, fish it out. If you can't fish it out, flush it out. He's tried all those things. He's tried flushing it out. He's tried cleaning the diaphragm, put it all back together, still having issues. If that's the case, he said it's also leaking inside the box. So sometimes what happens here is if you don't assemble this all the way, you don't tighten down these screws tight enough, sometimes you'll have weeping occur along this gasket where the diaphragm connects the two. Or if you over tighten it, there's a potential you could actually crack this lower half. And if this lower half is damaged, it has to be replaced. And that's a little bit of a task. A lot of people would think that's too much for a DIYer, and they would call a sprinkler professional. Sometimes people call us all the time, call a sprinkler professional to come out and repair this top part. To me, all this stuff's pretty easy. To some people, it's not, and some people would rather pay to have it done and pay for that convenience. But if it's in this lower part, this whole thing needs to be cut out and redone. This system has threads right here. You can't unthread it though, because you can't twist the pipes in the ground. These joints are glued, so you have to cut it out. So we're gonna show you real quick how to do that in the event that's your problem. So if we addressed everything with this, if your valve's stuck on, you probably have a rock in here. You need to get that rock out and put this back together. If the repair's down lower, then you have to replace this. A lot of times, most technicians just replace this upper half. It's much less time consuming in labor, and it's same cost in parts. So It's easiest to reuse that. That's pretty common practice. Whether you have a bad solenoid or a bad diaphragm or some other internals in here, that's the easy solution. So in order to replace this, remember, we're in a box, we're buried in the ground. At this point, you probably want to dig up that box, remove the box, give yourself some extra working room, dig underneath the pipe, give yourself an inch or two extra room. Get in here with some pipe cutters, and we cut this sucker out. And, you know, we're obviously just doing this for demo. This is not actually glued, but in your application it should be. Or you've got other problems. Okay, so now once we're cut, we're going to look something like that. We're going to pull this old piece out. We're going to bring our new piece in. He actually has a Hunter valve. This one just has 4 bolts on it. Similar setup. We got a solenoid. We got a diaphragm in between, and we just have 4 bolts instead of the 6. This other one is a Rainbird. It'll just depend on what the contractor uses to your situation. So to put in a new valve, if that's the situation, we need to get some male adapters. 2 male adapters go in here. When you put in your male adapters, you're going to need to use Teflon. And when you do your Teflon, you're going to want to twist it on as if you're screwing on the pipe. I usually do about 2-3 wraps, and I just do it in the same direction that I'm going to spin into the valve. So when I start spinning it, it's going to kind of tighten that Teflon around there. So you'll put this in, hand tighten it. You can go pretty far. The Teflon kind of lubricates it, and then you'll be able to go. You don't want to go too tight on these, but once you get it in there, maybe a quarter, half, full turn more, and you're in there. I'm not going to Teflon this other one, but that'll give you a good idea of what you're looking at. So now we got our valve ready to go in. Okay, so when we pulled out this old section of pipe, we've got this set distance. So when we put on our new one, this will slide on here, but now we've got this gap to fill. And this is where a slip fix is worth its weight. These are the best repair tools. You can fix this with just a coupler. You can put a coupler in line down here, but what you have to do is you have to dig 4 or 5 feet down the line so you can lift this pipe and give it enough slack and bow on it to where it can go an inch into this fitting. So if we have a slip fix, what this does is we're going to put one end right here, and what we'll have to do is we'll have to cut out this section of pipe so we can slip this in and cut back this section of pipe so it's the right distance away, and then we can pull this end out when we glue it. So this fitting just pulls out. So we'll pull it out on this end, the glue in here, and we'll pull out on the other end and the glue on this end, and then that piece will fit in there. And then when this gets pressurized, it has a little rubber gasket in here that's leak proof. So really, really handy tool that'll really help you out. So you obviously glue this in, put it in, you glue your slip fix, put it in, and then expand your slip fix and put it in on the other end. We'll show you real quick how to glue. Okay, so I typically always use glue and primer. These are brand new bottle of glue right here. And when you're using the smaller pipe, 1-inch pipe, you don't really have to use primer. If your temperatures are really cold, it's probably not a bad idea. I just do it all the time. I figure it's not that difficult. It doesn't cost that much. But you got this purple primer, you put it in here, and this just kind of helps clean the pipe. It helps soften it and prepare it for this plastic weld. So we got some blue PVC glue right here. So we're just gonna dab this in here, and you know, you're gonna make a mess. And then when you stick these fittings in, you're gonna go in and do about a quarter turn. And if you let go, sometimes the chemical reaction will actually push that off. You wanna make sure you're just kind of hold it for a few seconds, 5-10 seconds, and then you let go. And now it's gonna start curing. Before you turn on the water, I wait a good 10-15 minutes, because the last thing you want is the water to pressurize this and blow these apart, because then you have to redo the whole repair, and then you have to wait another 10-15 minutes in order to do it. So it's well worth waiting a few extra moments once you glue it. But there's a glued fitting. Just rinse and repeat through all the different glue joints. Let me close these up. Pretty potent stuff right here. so it's nice to use outdoors. Okay, once you've glued up your fitting here, last step, you got to wire this. So I didn't grab any wire nuts, but this is not just a household wire nut. You want to use wire nuts that are designed for outdoor use, wire nuts that are designed for sprinklers, and typically you can find them, they're just silicone filled. So a lot of times they're black with white, black and white caps, and then inside them there's a little cover that covers the hole where the wires go in, and there's just silicone inside there. So those silicone ones work really well. You also have some that are traditional wire nuts, but then you dip them in a huge tube. It's a kind of a light blue colored tube of wire nuts. I'm sure you can find those at a sprinkler supply store near you. But those are what you're gonna want. You're gonna want to wire these up to the same 2 wires that you had going to your previous valve. So you'll just want to cut these off. You can see here these are pretty short. Just cut them off, strip them. And these come with kind of pre-stripped, so you can kind of, I'm not sure if you can see that. You just pull that end off, and then you've got your stripped end there. I usually re-strip them. That's too long. That's about 3/4 of an inch. I usually do about 1/2 an inch. Redo your wire nuts together, and you should be good to go. You can reuse your solenoid if you want to. If you're putting new components in, you probably ought not to, but if you don't really want to mess with the wiring, you can unscrew these solenoids and screw it into your new valve, and then your wire, you don't have to mess with your wiring. But these solenoids do go bad from time to time, so to save yourself from having to fix the solenoid in the future, that's the way I do it. Okay, so recap, there is our replacement valve setup. So you have to Teflon it, put it in, and then that gives you a new bottom half in the event that your bottom half was cracked or some other malfunction was occurring there. Sometimes when you're having an issue, you just have to put it all new, and that's a good way to go. My dad asked me, hey, is there any way we can manually turn off this valve so we can run the rest of the sprinklers? And unfortunately, in this situation, you essentially have a mainline leak, and the leak is in the valve here. So the valve is letting water go into the pipes, and then it's leaking out through the heads, and that is allowing all this mainline pressure, and their leak's so bad that it's actually not allowing sufficient pressure to run any zone. Sometimes when this happens, you have enough pressure, you can kind of get some other zones to run, but in this case, it's not working out. So you can sometimes manually turn these off. In fact, just this week, I had a client call me up first thing in the morning, said, hey, our sprinklers went off at 5 o'clock in the morning like they were supposed to, and then when they were supposed to turn off, they didn't turn off. I went to the controller, turned them off, but they're still running, and she said they're like vibrating or pulsating. So I go over there, and sure enough, the sprinklers are kind of just going on and on, like they're about 100%, 50%, 100%, 50%, about a 2 or 3 second cycle. And I went and played with the valve. Go to the valve, we got these adjustment screws. These are just bleeder screws. You can manually turn on your sprinklers right here. On the top here, it says turn a quarter right on the top there. So you just twist that, quarter turn, sprinkler system should turn on manually, right, clockwise, quarter turn, you can feel it tighten up, should shut off. Same thing with this little bleeder screw. You can loosen that, sprinkler should turn on, you tighten it back up, and it should turn off. In another situation, I don't know what was going on with the line, why it had that malfunction. This is a new client this year. We're actually going to be replacing their main line, but that's a different story for a different day. So I just went in there, opened up the valve, closed it, opened up the bleeder screw, closed it, did that a couple times, and then I was eventually able to get that zone to shut off. So it probably has like a weak diaphragm or something like that, causing it to kind of just pulsate, or one of these screws was just a tiny bit loose, and it was allowing a little bit of water pressure, and then it was kind of trying to close and then reopening. But those are a way you can manually shut these off. But if this diaphragm is blocked with a rock or something like that, you've got essentially a mainline leak. So you have to replace this unit. Some commercial systems will have a manual shutoff, but most residentials don't. So if you have a valve malfunction or issue, you have to replace the valve in order to turn back on your main line and to be able to utilize your sprinkler system. Hopefully that wasn't too crazy. Hopefully that was a pretty good in-depth review. Kind of my thought process when I do a repair, kind of step by step, starting with the little problems, kind of resolving them, going up to the big problems. Should be a pretty good thorough video. Just kind of off the cuff, throwing this out there. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. Leave any questions or comments down below. We've got a bunch of other sprinkler landscaping content, as well as household DIY repairs and whatnot. So yeah, check out the channel if you aren't already subscribed, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching Thrifty Garage.